The other thing that I think different from complexity that brings that burden is guilt. Uh,
Mm.
why me? Why was I successful? I certainly didn't grow up this way. The people I went to high school with, my neighborhood, the rest of my family members, they're really good people too. Why me? Why am I why was I blessed with this level? And the burden of that success is sometimes just from the emotional side of "Wha I I I don't know how I got here. I don't know why me?" And that's a burden.
Welcome to Your Next Big Project is You, a podcast based around the theme of time. Time to be able to press pause on life. Time to reevaluate what's important. Time to reminisce about where you've come from, what you've learned, and what you've accomplished. Time to revisit your goals, dreams, and vision. And time to remember the people in your life. That's it, my friends. If you've got time, fasten your seatbelt and listen in as we discuss opportunities for the next 5 to 25 years of your life. And remember, your next big project is you. Welcome to our podcast. Your next big project is you. And I've got a special guest today, an old friend. We were actually just trying to figure out how long ago we first met. And I'm afraid to say that it's close to 2 decades. It's probably aging me and Jaleigh, possibly, but I'm so grateful that I know Jaleigh White, who's our special guest today, meeting her almost 18 years ago, back in an assignment of trying to build a organizational story. And Jaleigh, thank you for joining me today. So good to be able to talk to you like this.
It's great to see you, Leo. It is hard to believe it's been that long, but we've been through a lot together. So
Oh my gosh. All
been
those
a good
times we've
journey.
talked, yeah, the times dinners and breakfast and trying to, work on some assignments and things. But I always remembered you talking about being this tax geek and somebody that came up in the accounting world. And all of a sudden this journey led you into the wealth management world and not just dealing with the high net worth, and really elevating your game and the competencies and the organizational stories and capabilities of firms that you've been privileged to work with. You've really become a guru and an expert, from my perspective, a real thought leader in the ultra high net worth space of dealing with a lot of people, a lot of their issues, their challenges. And tell us about that journey from accounting world to the wealth management world.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's been a journey and a journey that I've loved really every step of the way. So yeah, so I am the tax geek, the math geek. I decided when I was 15 years old, because of a business teacher in high school that knew I was passionate about math, that I wanted to be a partner in a big eight accounting firm. So that was my goal when I was 15. I didn't change that. Went to Arthur Anderson when that firm existed and really loved the tax side of things. But then I decided I really wanted to do more than just the compliance of reporting on what did happen and really be with people in a more immersive way in their journey. Huge passion for founding business owners and entrepreneurs. I think it's what this country was founded on, and I love all their stories. So that took me from public accounting after about a dozen years to a financial institution. I was the bridge between commercial and the private bank. So as business owners transition from their business, how do we help them with that next phase of their life? Built a family office there and really loved it. That's when you and I met as we were starting really from a blank page of what that family office was going to look like to define it. And going through that journey with you helped us make a lot of business decisions around that. Through the crisis in 2007, 2009, decided I really just couldn't serve clients, especially business owners, the way I wanted to inside a publicly traded financial company of any type because of the regulatory environment. So left from there to go to a private wealth management firm and have been here ever since. And just that passion for business owners continues. And that's where I spend most of my time of helping them on their journey.
Yeah. Your passion has been absolutely palpable from the first second I met you. And especially, I know just a small business owner, but even just the time I've had with you listening in your own way, You've opened up the zipper on my chest to talk about my entrepreneurial journey. And I know you love hearing about others in terms of what's led to their success, their challenges, their circumstances, as we talk about their concerns, their frustrations, their needs, their opportunities, there's problems. That's come into some of our discussions, but you've been so great in listening to those stories from people that you've been privileged to serve yourself. One thing caught my attention when we were talking was you had mentioned that a lot of people's perspectives or the way they look at wealth really starts at an early age. And some research that either you've learned from or your own personal research got me thinking about my own life as a 7-year old or a 10-year old. And tell us more about, as you said, the early part of our life, whether we know it or not, really dictates much of how we feel about money and wealth today. Your thoughts on that, please?
Yeah, it is a scientific fact. A lot of research has been done that between the ages of 7 and 14 is when all of our permanent imprints about money really take place. So, in discovery with any of the families that we work with, if I can really get a good picture of what life was like as the 10-year-old self of the client, then I know the lens that they kind of view everything else through that lens that is permanent. And it tells me so much about them. And then it's interesting when we talk with parents and they're in their 60s and or 50s and they have adult children and they say, "Well, I just want to make sure, that our kids don't feel entitled or that, this wealth doesn't ruin them." And like that was done when they were 10 years old. What
Yeah,
did you do
exactly.
then? What did you share with them about your values? Did you make them earn anything? Did you let them fail? Did you let them struggle? Those things that happen to them in that 7 to 14, that shapes them, and that's really hard to undo later. So that's why the families we work with, we really try to get them to be more intentional about even children at a young age and those lessons and values they're passing on to them. They're listening, they're learning, and things are being permanently imprinted.
Boy, that research, Jaleigh, and your interpretation and educating people around it is so spot on. When you mentioned that to me, it made me think of my childhood, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, whatever. Um, and you're so accurate with that research. I always tell people I came up from values. I didn't come up from money to do this. And you made me think about my mother and father. My mother worked on a General Foods assembly line making Cool Whip, and my father was a laborer with a mask on way before a pandemic because he worked in a dirty, dusty mill and then came home, took a 30-minute nap. My mother made dinner and he went up to the local bank and was a janitor. And there's something about it because every time I still see someone who is a hard worker, cleaning a bathroom or mopping or brooming or picking up waste or things like this, it's funny. You have a whole different sense of appreciation. It's like, I want to know their name. I want to know how you doing. Thank you for helping. It's really nice of you to do this because I knew my dad did that. And so that orientation that affected me on money as well, knew how hard work and discipline, accountability of how to do it well. You said to me as well, though, that a lot of families manage wealth exceptionally from your experience, but they're the exception. Why is that?
We have a lot more research now, Leo, and also just what you've observed over the years. But the number one thing that really helps create families of enduring legacy is the communication that happens within the family or doesn't happen. And that's really what makes successful, enduring families. What do they talk about? What do they communicate with each other? The families that I work with are all families of legacy wealth. They will not consume what they have in their lifetime. So it's going to have generational impact. And I feel like one of the most important aspects of the role that we serve for those families is to, first of all, help the parents clarify what their intentions are on the impact that wealth is going to have. And then to bridge the gap between those intentions and the expectations the children have about the impact it's going to have for them. And more often than not, there's a cavern in between those parent intentions and the expectations of the children, and they never talk about it. Uh, and that's really the root of most of the problems that we see in families is that lack of communication. So we facilitate a lot of those conversations. Several families that I work with, the parents, I give them homework. I'll ask them, well, are they going to sell a business? What impact do you want this to have on your children? And I'll ask them questions about how do you feel about spouses? Are you going to help with the house? Are you going to let them have some of these funds during their lifetime? And the moment I see the husband and wife look at each other, I'm like, oh, they have never talked about these issues. They spent so much time building this great business that they have never really had the time to talk about those. So, we kind of stop the meeting right then, give them homework, give them a bottle of wine, tell them to go have a date night. And here's some issues you need to talk about for us to know how to really be able to help you make those things come to life. So it's all about communication.
Yeah, just a follow up on that. Is it just a lack of understanding of how to do it, or is it just the sense of entitlement that their kids have already had, and it's just easier to say, well, I'll just give them the new car, or we'll give them some money to buy their new house, but I don't want them to really. It's just too hard or difficult to talk about, how we want a more of a philanthropic bent, or I want them thinking differently, or whatever. I'll just take care of that. um, where's the gap? Is it just the ignorance, the lack of knowing to be able to sit down and the right questions? I can see the value you bring by giving them that homework. And this is what you need to ask. This is what the answers that I need to get from you in order to help you and your family. So what holds them back?
I think I related to a couple I was talking to last night, and they're young. They're in their 45s. One's a business owner, one's an executive. And literally, as we were talking about the situations they're in, they're like, we don't know how we got here. It's like we blinked and we went from uh, not being able to get a loan at a bank to start our business to having wealth beyond our wildest imagination. How did we get here so quickly? And now what do we do about it? So um, and they don't have usually a model to look back on because most of what we work with are first generation business owners. So it's like, how do we do this? And it's not having a community where they can really share that. So often the circle of friends that they grew up with, that they spend time with, are not in that same situation. So it's like not something they talk about with their friends over dinner. So they feel isolated from the
Yeah.
issues that they're dealing with. And but it's not lack of desire. They really want it to be a positive impact. They really want to do the right thing. They just don't know how. And so that's where I think we can step in because literally we've done this hundreds of times with families. I've kind of seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. But for them, they'll do it once in their lifetime where they go through this big transformation of wealth and they're just unprepared for it.
Yeah, I believe this next question is a cousin of the last one here. When people start to know they are transitioning to a liquidity event or some new phase of wealth transition, as you said, some of them are just starting too late. They need to think about this well ahead of time. How does that fit into your advice to families or business owners? As you say, you're in a passionate discussion with a business owner. He or she is thinking about the next event for her company or his company to do this, and you're counseling them saying, "Wait a minute, time out. You can't wait 6 months, or you can't wait a year. This is going to hit you like a two by four." Tell us about that advice that you're giving to business owners to be thinking ahead of the game and not waiting till after it's already hit them.
That's so true. And our motto is it's from the moment you start a business, you should be thinking about your transition from it. When you're starting a business, it may be an unplanned transition, especially if you have partners, making sure you have a buy sell agreement so that you have a plan for the unexpected. And then as your business matures and you start to think about an exit, that's when you get to a whole nother level of intentional discussions about it. So going back to the tax geek side, there's definitely a lot of things you can do to optimize taxes, but it's so much more than that to really imagine what your life is like beyond that event and start to plan for that. But to really do our job well when we know someone's going to transition out of a business, to have all the options available, we really need 2 to 3 years to go through that
Wow.
planning process, to put things in place to be ready for that event. And then the thing that we really caution our business owners about is don't expect or kind of hold yourself accountable to be to your new normal 3 months after you sell your business. Uh, Talked to a business owner on Monday, met him for the first time that sold his business in January. And he's like, well, you could tell all this pressure and sense of urgency that he needed to have all these things figured out. And I just saw him relax when I said, everything you just said of what you're trying to figure out, it will be 2 to 4 years before you really know the answers to that. And I just watched him relax. He's like, "That was worth the whole meeting just to for you to
Yes.
give me grace to, with myself to know it's gonna take a minute to figure this out." So, always should be thinking about your transition, get really serious about it a couple years before, and then know that the post-transition period is going to be a good 2 to 4 years before you get to whatever your new normal is.
You must knock a business owner off their chair when you say 2 to 3 years at a time, because they're probably thinking 2 to 3 days or two
Yeah.
to three weeks or 2 to 3 months. For most business owners I know, feel, well, I'll just take care of it. The sense of urgency, and I'll move on to the next project. I'm just going to sell the company and come on in. We'll just talk about this. But I think when you're saying, wait a minute, time out, you've got to look at this thing totally differently. And that's when you said the 100 or so plus families that you've been privileged to serve, that experience has got to come into play where you can talk with a whole different level of authority because you've been there, you've done it.
I think it's very helpful to families that, and if anything, it normalizes what they're feeling and what they're experiencing to know that they're not alone in what they're going through and what they're feeling. Because again, often they don't have a group of friends that they can talk to about. And the other big change that happens is sometimes it's a challenge to get both spouses involved in conversations. They're like, well, it's all about the business and that's their business. So, it's not really something I get involved in. But the moment they sell, when it becomes all about family, they do care. And often we've seen even major decision making switch from between the spouses at the moment the business is sold, because now it's about the impact on the family. And that brings in a whole different type of discussion.
Wow. I remember also being around a flip chart with you and a few of the folks reporting up to you years ago. We were listing a series of business beliefs, key learnings, perspectives that you had, opinions, your wisdom, your insight from working in that ultra high net worth space of people. And just for the listeners here, the ultra high net worth space to you is defined as what?
We think of it really as anything with a total net worth above 25 million, because then
What?
you're in a range where you have a taxable estate. You're probably not going to expend all those funds during your lifetime. So we really are talking about legacy wealth. So
Okay.
that's a good kind of benchmark of where complexity gets to a different level.
Okay. And so one of those things we discussed on that flip chart was we believe that wealth can be a blessing and or a burden. And it's funny because some people think of that as cliche now. Some people still view it as provocative. And to me, the difference is having the level of experience that you have from talking to business owners, talking to some of those C suite executives that are transitioning, talking to some of these families. You know what burden is. And it's real, isn't it? The issue of it's not just the blood, but it's a burden. Tell us more about that burden from your perspective.
It is a burden, and it's always a combination of both. And we say that our role in working with families, our kind of tagline is the human side of legacy wealth, of what this really means for your family. But I think a lot of the burden comes from probably a couple of different lenses. One is just the complexity of that wealth. And it's one of the business owners, this 2 days ago, she said, and she's one of those people that doesn't know how she got to here, this huge successful business. She's like, I just want to simplify my life. That's my word of the year. I want to simplify. And like, we will get you as close to that, but you have gotten to a level of success that simplicity is not achievable, but we can help you get closer to that goal. But that level of success and wealth just inherently has a level of complexity. The other thing that I think different from complexity that brings that burden is guilt. Of
Mm.
why me? Why was I successful? I certainly didn't grow up this way. The people I went to high school with, my neighborhood, the rest of my family members, they're really good people too. Why me? Why am I why was I blessed with this level? And the burden of that success is sometimes just from the emotional side of "Wha I I I don't know how I got here. I don't know why me?" And that's a burden from it. Um, some cases, the burden is inherited. I'm working with one family now, and he is generation 4 from a family business that was sold a couple of generations ago. He's in his 40s, has, a grade school age child, and his goal is to give away over $100 million of wealth before his child gets to high school so that he never has to feel the burden of wealth that he's felt his entire life. So we've spent 2 years, helping him explore his charitable intent. It's been a lot of fun. He's really been engaged in the process, but he wants most of it totally gone so that his children never have to feel the burden that he's felt for 40 years. So it's definitely both, but the blessings are so much fun to see people enjoy the blessings of wealth, the impact that they can make on their community, the impact working with one business owner, he's actually going to be here tomorrow and has made more than he could ever spend in his entire life. And what excites he and his wife is the impact they're having on their employees. And he just wants to bring as many people up with him as he can. And so he's fully grasping the blessings that come with it and wants to share them. So it's that scale that we always try to tip the blessings up and take away as many of the burdens as we can. But they're there
Oh,
and they're
yeah.
real.
Isn't it amazing to think of some of the people you've been privileged to serve that may have that 25 million or 50 million, 100 million, whatever, half a billion, $1 billion, that all of a sudden say, I wish I almost didn't have this. My gosh, this is, who would have thought? I'm like overwhelmed. People coming at you from all walks of life. The local hospital, the local, your high school, your university, your kids' high schools, your kids' universities, religious organizations, people, cancer society, Alzheimer's, you name it, things that you've dealt with your families. You got to be surrounded by everybody wanting a piece of that pie, right? At some
Yeah,
point.
there is. Yes. Yeah. Working with one business owner that just made me think of, and he is 70, not selling the business, passing it on to the next generation. And when we talked to him about charitable intent, he's like, I've been burnt out by that. He's like, my
Yeah.
whole life, my business was the prominent family business. He's second generation. He's like, I'm just burnt out from every time I walk into a restaurant or into a meeting. Someone always wants to tell me about their new cause that they want me to help with. He's like, and I've helped a lot, but it's burned me out. I just want to go live my life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's, but he's
Well,
done a lot of good along the way too.
let's go on there. It's not a burnout, but it's a you care so much about people that you serve. I know the act of caring and wanting to align expertise to really help individuals is through the roof from my privilege of working with you. But you got to worry me. And I talked to you about this in the past of dealing with some of the clients and especially business owners. We talk about that community, and what have you learned that just concerns you so much? It's just like you meet somebody, you're talking to them, and I know it's almost like a temperature thing. Your meter goes up. when you either are talking to somebody or hearing about something. I think it brings all this conversation together. But tell us about your worry meter.
Uh, you're right, I do. I take it very personally, and, our team really cares. As someone on my team, said not too long ago, it's really honorable work we get the privilege of doing with the families we serve, and we do take it as a responsibility, to serve them and help them through, especially these big life events. And business owners, just by their nature, if you own a business, you know it yourself, Leo. Think about it 24/7, and it's hard to let anything else sometimes creep in of some of your personal needs, whether it's self care or personal financial care, because your business is just all consuming. And with most business owners, their identity, especially when your name's on the door, their value, their life's value is so in, intrinsic with the business itself that they don't know who they are or what value their life has when the business isn't there. So there's about a dozen business owner psychologists that we work with across the
Mm.
country that we engage with our business owners to help them plan and think through what's the value of your life, when it's not this business, because they're these great people, but they're about to go through something that is very it's a big deal, and it takes planning and intention, and one of those psychologists that I work with, I'm like, "Oh, you get to work with so many great people." They said, "How do you measure your success?" And, it was over 10 years ago when I remember we were at lunch having this discussion. He's like, "I measure my success if the suicide rate of my business owner clients who retire in their 60s is less than the national average." And I'm
Wow.
shocked. I mean, like, there's a statistic about that. He's like, "Oh,
Holy
yeah."
cow. A
And it's
suicide rate.
true. And it's real. So, but that's where,
Jeez.
communication comes in. That's where all the planning comes in. That's how helping these, business owners and their families really dig in deep of what are your values? What do you want your life to look like? And, another one I worry about is divorce and business owners. I remember one family that had a sudden wealth event. They weren't planning on selling. Someone from Germany came over, offered them over 100 million, and they were in their 50s. And they're like, I mean, they had no investments outside of this business. And it's like winning the lottery. And I remember sitting at their house out on their deck one day, and we were talking about the impact it was going to be on their family, and clearly saw they did not see eye to eye. They did not, it hadn't talked about anything. And I came home that night and worried about it all weekend because I always met with them on Fridays. And I called them on Monday and like, we are hitting the pause button. The money's coming in over 100 million in 10 days. Here's what we're going to do with it. It's a short-term investment strategy. We are not going to talk about the money for 6 months. I'm going to bring in one of the business psychologists that I work with, and he's going to work with the two of you to help you figure out the impact this is going to have on your life. And that's what we did. Through it, they discovered together how much they really wanted to leave to their families, what they wanted the rest of their life to look like. And then they discovered some great joint charitable intent that they have. And they ended up spending the rest of their lives really making an impact in their community with a couple of key organizations that they were passionate about. But I remember that weekend of thinking, my gosh, something great has happened in their lives, and it could be the thing that tears them apart. Um, but it
Yeah.
didn't, and they just live a very fulfilled, abundant life, and they're sharing it now with their grandchildren, not just their children, and it's become a great family legacy. But it's hard work, like anything else in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
You have to be intentional about it, and you have to be willing to put in the time, the effort, the work to make it happen.
Well, intentional is a operative word there that I'm talking to another entrepreneur just a couple of days ago. And it's funny, I'm just thinking of this from my own scenario, running my business out for over 3 decades, is the way he described it was, you know, married, 2 kids, sound familiar? Sounds like you, right? Committed, husband, spouse, that type of thing. 2 kids growing, doing well, finding their own way in the world. But he said there's this fear of failure. And it's this ongoing thought of letting your family down.
Mhm.
You know something? 3 decades later, I don't think it ever goes away.
No.
I really don't think when you look in the mirror, especially when your name is on the door of a lot of these entrepreneurs you deal with, these business owners, it's just one of those internal part of our nervous system or something that you're constantly thinking of protecting your name, your business, not upsetting a spouse, and letting the kids down and the grandkids at some point. Now, it just doesn't go away. Hey, you've been a great listener to me as well on my newest venture of helping people, and this really aligns well to a lot of those people you serve, living their life with significance and with no regrets, with abundance. That comes into play big time. Their time, their talent, their treasure, with having gratitude, with having perspective in their life, increasing their sensitivity really to what they have and what others don't. The quest to be their best in the roles in their life, and now to live their legacies, not to leave them. Use the word impact as well. So it's not just thinking of what you can impact, but it's to do it now, not when you're gone. And somebody says, "Oh wow, look at Jaleigh, or look what Leo did. My God, they left all this money, and now he wants to give it down to their university, to their school, or to their church, or whatever else." But how do you live it right now? So I'm curious. You've been a sounding board and a mentor to me to help me to think about my vision and my passion. What what do those principles resonate to you? Does one resonate more than the other? How do you when you hear about that continually? You've been a great ear to me. Which of those jumps off at you when I talk about that?
Um, they all do, and to different people in different ways. Many, many, many years ago when I turned 40, I thought, "Oh, at 40, you should have your life all figured out." So I kind of went on my own little sabbatical, like for a weekend, and thought, "Okay, what's my life about from here on out?" Because I've been driving hard and just working really hard, and I decided at 40, the mantra for the rest of my life was going to be: if you didn't fall into both categories or one or the other, then why was I doing that activity or why were these people in my life? So, two things: meaningful relationships and interesting experiences. And once I decided that was what was really important to me, if I ran everything through those filters, it was really easy to decide what to do and what not to do. Uh, but again, it's back to taking time to do that. And for I think the business owners that we work with, that legacy is so important because they've created something. So, and then you're right, it's like this fragile egg of something you created. And now that you've created, you don't want to drop it and break it. And when we've gone through experiences like the recession, 2007, 2009, we go through COVID 3 years ago, and you see how fragile life is, how fragile your business might be, then
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of why that never goes away. But I don't know if you'll remember this, Leo, but 3 years ago or 12 years ago this month, I was standing in my backyard trying to decide because I thought this publicly traded financial institution life isn't for me. But and it wasn't a very comforting time. We just got through the recession to leave and go to something else. I called you one night. Uh, and I can remember standing in my backyard and you taking me through this conversation about my life. Well, what's most important to you? What's really going to make you want to get up in the morning and do things? How are you going to live a life of abundance that's aligned with your values? Uh, and that is, taking the time for all of us to step away from daily life and just think about all of those topics you just said, which is why I thought you had to do the sabbatical experience because we all need it so much. And it's forcing people that are very busy, very successful to take some time out for introspection, um, and think about the future. And that's what we try to do for the families that we work with, especially the business owners every day. They're such great people with such great stories that have achieved so much and care so much. How
Yeah.
do we help them not only and maybe not even at all die rich, but truly live a rich life.
Yeah, well
Uh,
said.
and that's what we want them to feel empowered to be able to do.
Mhm.
And so that every member of their family gets to live a life of purpose, and that the success they have only enables people to in their family to be able to do it sometimes on their own terms in their own way, but empowered by the success of the generation before them. It's just such a privilege to get to work with the families we do, to get to work with colleagues like, you and your team along the journey, because it does take a village. It takes a lot of us with very different skill sets to come together to help people figure out what makes their life have tremendous value that's enduring through generations.
Yeah, cool. So memorable relationships, unique experiences, things like that. You remember from what we created, I this issue of gratitude hits me listening to you. I'm grateful that I know you, and that one of the exercises that we encourage entrepreneurs or clients of yours is to think of who's on your top 100 list, or who are those people that helped you to get to where you're at today. Have you let them know? Do they know the role and the value that they played in your life and your success? So I'm going to end this today with a perspective on gratitude, because I'm grateful that Julie, you've been by my side for almost 2 decades as a client, but more importantly, as a valued friend of someone who can ask me the tough questions in return, and to pull my palpable passion out about what I'm doing, see how it comes together. So I can't thank you for your time and your input today. To our listeners, they're going to learn a lot from your thoughts on wealth and burdens and all the good, cool things we talked about today. And I thank you so much for everything and your contributions. Thank you.
Well, the feeling's mutual. I've learned so much from you, and look forward to collaborating with you on so many more things as we go through this journey called life. It's fun. It's a privilege to get to do it every day. I get more excited about what we get to do every day, and it's so fun to see the impact that you're having
Yeah.
on so many levels and so many people. So thanks so much
Well,
for having me.
as I always say, stay close.